Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today I've got Jeremy Scrivens, all the way from the other side of the world. So it's the morning in my time and it's the evening in Jeremy's time. The powers of the internet. Today we're going to talk about future of work, from fixing things to new beginnings, and we're particularly going to focus on what Jeremy calls social rooms. But before we get into that, Jeremy, where can people get hold of you?
Basically through LinkedIn. My profile's on LinkedIn. I think there's only one Jeremy Scrivens, or might be two on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, Twitter, my Twitter handle at Jeremy Scrivens, but also at email, emotionaleconomy.com emotionaleconomy.net at gmail.com, all lowercase.
And for those listening who English may not be their first language, Jeremy with a J, E-R-E-M-Y, Scrivens is S-C-R-I-V-E-N-S. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you.
It still always amazes me about how we can talk without satellite delays and things like that. Anyway, we're going to talk about social rooms. Before we get into that, why don't we talk a little bit about your background and how you kind of came to be where you are today?
Background: born in England a very long time ago, 1955, born Oxford. Then went to Rhodesia, was Zimbabwe when I was about 8-9 years old. Came back to England, lived in Buckinghamshire. Dad was a Church of England minister, and he also loved cricket, hated the cold. So every time he came back to England, it was middle of winter, got cold, off he went somewhere else again, went to Jamaica, developed a bit of a Jamaican accent for a little bit of time, but then came back to England again. Then finally, we went to Australia, and I was about 14 or 15, so I had to study, settle down for a bit. So yeah, in Australia for a long time, since about 1970, went to school, last 2 years of school. Then joined the Commonwealth the Australian Public Service, Civil Service, as a graduate intake. Spent a number of years there, specialised in human resource management. We didn't call it then, we call it personnel management. Got interested in what we now call organisation development. I was fascinated with what work was and how we organise work. In those days, it was more extrinsic, the structure of things, the head stuff rather than the heart stuff. Then went to the Electricity Commission here for a few years as their organisation development manager, and then was headhunted to come into Telstra, our big telecommunications company, in 1990. And the first job I had was to set up the HR conditions for MobileNet, the young business that was being put into competition with Vodafone and Optus.
Right. And
we had just revolutionised the way in which we hire people, and brought the first 360 assessment tools into Australia back in 91, emotional intelligence, that sort of stuff. And then about mid-90s was asked to look at how we could organise for the internet. And so I began to look at how we hired young kids with jeans, not wearing suits, that sort of stuff. And that was and remember the day when data became more. There was more volume around data than voice in the Telstra feed, around about 1997.
Right.
And then about 2000, I was a bit tired of large organisations. I felt something was missing. Started my own practice, emotional economy at work. I actually was called Jeremy Scrivens Associates in those days. But at the same time, I then discovered a strengths-based approach towards large-scale innovation and collaboration called Appreciative Inquiry, around about 2003-04, which revolutionised my whole thinking about life and work and engagement and stuff. And so I began to play with the idea of bringing the whole system in the room to innovate and create. It was a precursor to things like inclusion, diversity, co-creativity, collaboration, which are the buzzwords now. At the same time, we have a couple of themes, Tim. One was the fact that, we've been seeing an emergence, a rise of employee engagement, type conversation. It was, Gallup were the first in the world to do that at scale.
Yep.
And increasingly the idea that more and more people were disengaged or not engaged at work, and those that were engaged, only a small fraction were engaged from the heart first, not the head. And yet I was taught, like so many managers and leaders, to engage from the heart, not the head. And also this idea that, how we're starting to move beyond the age of Professor Gary Hamel. Back in 2005, we're moving beyond the age of continuous improvement into the age of innovation. Engagement is no longer optional, it's essential. and I think we've got away with low engagement for a long period of time. So I began to reflect on that and what that meant. And I saw the new technology coming into play, and I saw what was happening where we're seeing people connected. So you can see technology is neutral. It's what you do with it that really matters. And I began to see the power of digital, which is the data and the how and the what of things, but also the social tech, the ability to connect together and to start to form collaborations at scale. And so all that stuff was going through my mind. What does it mean? And I knew that things were changing rapidly, and that the world of work that I grew up with was going to change. So that was my and so in the last few years I've been in that sort of space of increasingly more interested and more engaged with organizations to engage their strengths and their talents and the whole of what's available to them, both in what I call the summit room, which is the innovation, the live lab event, but also the social room, which is the idea of engaging an ecosystem in causes that the people care about, not just the organization.
So tell us your mushroom story, because I think that's
the mushroom farm.
It's a great metaphor, an example of what happened.
Well, of course, you say something like, "Well, until that point, I'd always been kept in the dark." But sorry about that, mate. But well, the fact is, a lot of us do live in the dark in terms of what is the potential, because we focus on the causes of darkness. We don't actually look for the light switch and switch it on. So there you go. And the mushroom farm was at a time a few years ago when I'd shifted out of Telstra, and I started to find that and it's a fundamental question now: is can you engage with large organizations to fundamentally change them? Or do you have to start with something smaller, like a startup? Think about the two conversations that we have in the world. Large scale so-called transformation, big organizations all go through their transformation project of the decade, and then you've got the startups. So it's all about startups. And so it's interesting. I'll come back to that. So, but Mushroom Farm was a farm that was doing really well, fantastically well, good product, good people, but typical fresh produce. The owner, John, was taught that people are an asset. They are their hands, right? So most of the people he hired were hired to pick mushrooms or to feed the drying rooms, the growing rooms with compost and all that sort of stuff, and the smart work, the head stuff, was done by very few people. And so people were assets in the machine. But he'd heard about Appreciative Inquiry, what I was doing with some of the other fresh produce market guys in Adelaide, and where we'd introduced a culture of kindness,
right? And
engaged a whole level of creativity and collaboration, and it switched on something in the business. They said, "Can you come and help me to engage my people in a room to engage their ideas about the future?" And I thought, brilliant, mate. Yeah, lovely. And it was a Saturday that I was due to fly over Friday to start run this one-day session. Now, can you imagine fresh produce? It's like a farm in the UK or a supermarket. No disrespect to the supermarkets, Tesco. I'm sure you deal with this, mate. But the average innovation conversation doesn't involve the people on the ground floor. Yeah. To be honest, right? To be really honest, it doesn't. And not as equal players. Yeah. More as this is what we've done upstairs. So how are you going to implement it, sort of thing? That's not the same thing. So it was a Monday morning. I was due to talk to John to talk about the topic for the summit. Now, the thing with the Appreciative Inquiry is that the trick is to recognise that most of our leaders have been taught to see organisations and people as problems. So we see the world through the lens of problems, whereas Appreciative Inquiry switches that and says, let's put problems to one side and look at possibilities and strengths. And so the idea is to create an affirmative topic around what gives life to everyone in that room, and then to imagine what if we extended life, the best of something, to become the normal experience, which is next chapter. So it's positive disruption from continuity, if you like, and most organizations don't know their positive core. So we were about to do that, and I was just about to call him, and he called me, and he said, he was absolutely really upset, really frantic, really, and literally he was always crying, actually. I said, "What's wrong, mate?" He goes, "The supermarket started again." I said, "What is it?" They said they are in a price war. So what happens in Australia? The supermarkets go into price wars. They sort of do this now and again, and of course the farmers and the growers suffer, to be honest.
Yep.
And so the supermarkets, the one supermarket slashed his mushrooms from $32 a kilo to $16 overnight. Now, no consultation, no, hey mate, we've got to talk about this. It's just woof. If you don't like it, mate, we'll go and get some mushrooms from somewhere else, right? That's the culture. That was the culture that existed at the time. So he was frantic, and he said, but I'm so glad we're getting all our people, our 60 people, because I come from Telstra with thousands of people, our 60 people. But those 60 were everybody, every single member of that mushroom farm, including the young Thai women who were picking mushrooms in their spare time when going to university, young African men who were refugees from Somalia, being employed in the compost farm and so on. But they came together as equal players. He said, I'm so grateful I'm so pleased that we've got this thing going on Saturday morning. I know what the topic is. I said, what is it, mate? He said, we'll spend the whole day taking out cost. I said, right, cool. Oh, the whole day taking out cost. Yeah, we'll get their ideas to take out cost. I said, so let me ask you a question, John. I said, you just humor me for a second, please. We'll come back to what you said. So let me get this right. All day taking out cost. You love your mushroom farm, don't you? And you grow some of the best mushrooms in Australia, period. I mean, they're not just ordinary. They are at their best, are superb, are they not? He said, yeah, they're wonderful. And you're proud of it, yeah. And you've grown your business, haven't you? Yeah, just as you grow mushrooms, you focus on growing, don't you? Right? I said, so I want you to imagine it's 20 years from now, you sold your mushroom farm, right? And you got your grandchild on your knee, this beautiful grandchild. And she wants to use these words. We say something like, Papa, you did something beautiful with your life. You left an amazing legacy. What was it? She looks up at you and you look down at her and smiles, says, sweetheart, I spent my whole life taking out cost. And I shut up. I shut up, Tim. And he sort of swore at me. He said, well, I said, mate, you're shooting at me, messenger. So let me ask you a question. In your craziest, wildest, and most imaginative moment, what have you dared to dream about as what's possible for your mushroom farm? What if you can maybe talk to your wife or someone about what's possible? He said, you know what? He said, my wife and I are concerned about the obesity levels of kids in Australia, right? And it's getting worse. And at times we thought, what if we had our kids eating mushrooms? What if they grew them? Because if they grew them, they'd eat them. Ownership, that's the principle of engagement. People own what they create. It's a fundamental principle of human motivation. Yeah. People take responsibility when they care about the topics, right? We don't do that with most of our people. We don't do that. We don't engage them in the topic creation or the ownership bit, right? I said, okay, that sounds really amazing. And I said, have you ever dreamed about how you can make that work? He said, yeah, I've always thought about going into the schools. If we get into the schools somehow, we could engage a new way of engaging the kids. They would eat healthily, and also I think we'd create a new market. So why don't you start that and open up the summit? So it took me 2 days, Tuesday and the Wednesday, to coach him, and on Saturday morning, on a cold day in Adelaide, he got up and he shared his vision of a future where young kids. First of all, he shared the problem. So the idea is to share a problem. There is a problem. The problem there wasn't the cost problem. The problem was our kids are becoming unhealthy.
Yeah.
So he equalized the topic for everybody. Yeah, makes sense. Everyone in the room had kids or loved kids. Does this matter to you? Yes, it does. What if we were to get into schools, and what if we were to create a new way of engaging those kids? Can you imagine that's possible? And would you create that with us today? I said, the reason I'm doing that is because the supermarkets have just slashed our price. And we can spend some time talking about costs, but you know what? Let's have a go at doing something different.
Yep.
And so Appreciative Inquiry, the 4D conversations, discover, dream, whatever. And at the end of the day, we got them to come together in their groups. So we mixed them all up, equalized, inclusion, diversity. We got them together and one team. So the question was, it's 3 years from now, come up with a design prototype of what's happening in the future, where are we working, what's new, what's different, what's been innovating, how are we in the schools? And they got up. And the first one to go with the presentation was the tech expert, the scientific advisor, who said, we've got into the schools with the world's first coloured mushroom growing kits for kids. And they are growing their own mushrooms. And someone yelled out, is that possible? He said, I've always wanted to do it. And one of the young African labourers said, and big smile on his face, and we have collaboration with celebrity chef.
Right.
And who's created mushroom menus for the kids, and they're in the schools with us, coaching these kids how to cook. And then one of the young Thai women on that team, who were told to switch off their iPhones and not use their phones, social media was bad, raced out the room, went to the locker, picked the phone up, came back in, put a phone up and said, we have mobile app and we have social room.
Right.
And I said, what's a social room? She said, we have a social community. We're collaborating. The kids are sharing their stories on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it was. And we're creating a community. And the financial manager said, yeah, and we've bypassed the supermarkets and making them irrelevant. And there was a big cheer in the room.
It's a lovely story. I love it.
And it's a true story. And do you know what? I saw the power of equality, of equity, everyone having the same. I saw the ability to create, to innovate, to move beyond fear into love.
Yeah.
I saw the John, this older guy, not on social media, who was sitting down at the end of the day with the young Thai women on their iPhones. They were telling him about analytics.
Right.
And I thought social room, and there was that appreciative inquiry, strengths-based collaboration at scale in the physical event. And I sort of thought, what about social room? What if we were to use the various social media platforms to engage conversations around the future of business and work as a social movement division in the future? So
we've got about 4 minutes left. So tell us about your social room and what you've done in your case studies.
Well, the social room is basically the articulated use of the various social media platforms hosted by a group of employees within an enterprise.
Yeah.
For example, Ultimate Software in America, or now called UKG. I've been working with them for the last 18 months to build the Equity at Work social room, which is a LinkedIn group and moving to Twitter and Facebook soon, which is hosted by the employees themselves around the causes they individually care about, such as homelessness, domestic violence, payday loans, mental health. And they engage in authentic conversations, and they engage collaborations at scale. And in turn, they engage in the causes that the organizations care about. So you could develop what's called a hashtag #MeWe conversation.
Yes.
And
we started up with, but it's about bringing together, in effect, the diversity of the organization on social, and using the power of network and community to collaborate for the good of this.
The difference is these are not hosted by the social media managers. This is a key difference. It's not a B2B, B2B to customer conversation. This is people being authentic at work at the same time they'd be outside of work, who are calling for causes that people care about, and connecting with others who think like they do, and doing what I call cause and commercial together. So the young kids now, the young talent coming through, care about causes. They want to work for organizations who care about making the world a better place and enabling them to collaborate and connect at scale. So what this does, it also allows the social movement division of a business to engage with an ecosystem. And bring more strengths, more talents, more opportunities to do both cause and commercial. Because if it's good enough for us to do a cause together, it's good enough for us to do business together. And that's what we're finding now with the social rooms. Civico Birmingham started up 3 years ago in the UK. MHR started up in the UK. Ultimate Software, or UKG, now in America. And in our own town of Wallen, we've got our own in-place social movement where half the town's involved in looking after each other during COVID.
And of course, what this does is it brings people together to collaborate, and you go through the process of knowing, liking, and trusting people. And not that it's actually set up for doing business, but you've actually seen people that actually say, well, I'm going to do business with you because of the fact that I know you and I like you and I trust you. And we have similar purpose and similar ideals. So therefore, we will do business together.
In the social room, the young workforce members, not just young, but because they're doing cause together, they develop this trust, and they also say, hey, would you like, I believe you guys, design or build buildings. Would you guys like to have a gig? So suddenly everybody becomes a salesperson, because it's the idea of work as a community. We do life and work together in that space.
Yeah. So you've talked about you've used them a lot around well, you call it causes, but it's mainly non-for-profit. And I've written down here in my notes, hashtag civic community and hashtag hold this space.
Hashtag hold this space and hashtag equity at work. So I'm going to encourage people, if you want to know more about a social room, jump into the Equity at Work social room LinkedIn group, or contact me and I will connect you straight into those amazing conversations. Give you just one quick example.
Yeah.
Last year we ran a LinkedIn group, UKG. Now this is a group of technology guys based in America. That this is an experiment for them. They hosted a conversation during COVID lockdown, a conversation with a LinkedIn group that had about 500 or 600 people. Questions like, how are you feeling right now? What are you seeing? What's emerging for you? What are you missing? What are you rejoicing in? What amazing adept conversation. 2 conversations within a few weeks created 1,000 comments and 100 pages of co-creation, and 60 people from 14 countries got on a Zoom call to say, how can we collaborate together across 20 or 30 different disciplines, all hosted by the employees themselves.
It's the power of the network, isn't it? And the power of the community.
Yeah. And I think the other hashtag, another hashtag is hashtag life work. You know, employees now will those organizations which will flourish in the future will be those that enable their individuals to develop and create their own life work purpose and dock that with others and share that with the organization's cause, and to enable the technology to make a seamless transition between home and work. You know, and COVID, of course, is triggering that now, because COVID is challenging the question of why should we necessarily have to go back to the office?
Yes. Yeah, I think that with COVID, I think we're now used to working at home. In fact, I was part of a discussion yesterday where people were saying, because it's still winter here in the UK, so we've got snow. And people are saying, well, why did we ever get in cars and travel on icy roads to go to an office where we can sit at home? And the answer is, yeah, why did we ever do that?
Because we took people out of the villages in England in the 18th century and put them into the factories.
And moved them into factories, and I think what happens now is that people are recognizing that they don't need to work in factories. We can actually sit in our villages and actually create.
And also, it's very important at this point, I think, that industrial model of work, which is what that model is a low trust model.
Yes.
It's also a model that was in place before technology. We couldn't operate and be as effective now without the technology, without the Zoom, without the connections. Yeah, certainly we need to meet face to face. Of course we do. That's so important. But there's so much we can do now with the technology. But the technology is available to every human being as an equal person. That's a challenge for industrial mindset organizations who still don't trust people. So their conversations around how are we going to make sure Tim is working productively at work, whereas the future of work organizations are saying, how can we help you, Tim, to flourish at work?
Yes, because the classic mindset is the fact that you go, where's Jeremy? Is he taking 2 hours for lunch? Well,
why hasn't he logged on?
Why isn't he sitting at his desk? You know, that because that's the way that people want to manage people.
I mean, the time and attendance tech guys now must be pulling their hair out, mate, because you know, it's based on a culture of fear. It's also based on the concept, just quickly, that work was limited by the idea of a job. I was taught in HR that you define work as a job description. So we only took a very small fraction of Tim or Jeremy into our work. But when work is, I define it now as anything that enables you and me to grow, that becomes something that's a very different concept in which the technology, the best of the technology, can elevate, flourish, and grow. It's both individual and a collective.
Jeremy, it's been fantastic. It's a fascinating subject, and one that I just know that COVID has accelerated all of the aspects of working from home, collaborating, community, all of those things. And I think we're just touching the surface. And it's great to talk to somebody that's actually driving this forward and innovating. Thank you. Where can people get hold of you, Jeremy?
Look, I'd love to. We need more social rooms, because these social rooms connect and collaborate with each other. I'm talking to a couple of very interesting organizations right now. I can't share their name, but I think they'd be well known about engaging in this space now. Please reach out to me on my email, emotionaleconomy.net@gmail.com, or my LinkedIn profile, Jeremy Scrivens, or @Jeremy Scrivens, Twitter.
And you're very social, so I mean, if the people can't find, they're not looking hard enough, really.
Yeah, I'm a social native.
And it's great talking to someone where you can just about hear their English accent in the background there.
Every time I go to England, because I haven't been back to England now for 18 months. Most of my gigs have been in England the last few years. Interesting there, but I can't get back to England. It'll be 2 years before I have to travel out of Australia. Can you believe that?
I know.
So we'll do it online, right? We'll just collaborate online.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Jeremy, it's really great talking to you, and thank you so much for sharing that. And your mushroom story is fantastic. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.
Pleasure. Nice to